Good morning, guys. This is Dr. Organic. Let's talk science. I bet all of you had this one mind experiment going through your head one time.
If you change genders for 24 hours, what's one thing you would do?
I'd definitely see what having a would be like. Probably the same.
If you change genders for a day, what's the first thing you would do?
I'd let all the homies hit.
So it kinda seems to be a big subject that triggers everybody's curiosity. What does sex feel like for the opposite gender? Can we actually relate? And at this point, I want to emphasize, since it's 2023, that I'm talking about the anatomic genders in a scientific way. I do not claim that there are only two genders, and I respect the variety of the LGBTQ plus community. But this is all about science, okay? Don't cancel me. So, how do we find out what it feels like? Believe it or not, there is an actual scientific answer to this. You already know it. What? Well, it's because there are some parallels in the medical development of your private parts and the ones of your gender counterpart. Let me explain. As we all know, at some point, we start out in life as a clump of cells. Then, some very complex differentiation processes based on gene expression, hormones, and lots of other factors start to unravel, which then define the fate of subsets of those cells. Those cells begin to shape different body parts. But up until the end of the first 8 weeks, there's no visible difference between male and female. In case you wondered, up until 8 weeks after fertilization, the unborn life is called embryo, which roughly translates to growing young. From the 9th week on, it's referred to as a fetus, which means offspring in Latin. Don't get confused, there are two different methods of counting weeks in embryology. Some people begin to count from the day of insemination, when the sperm hits the egg, but other people add 2 weeks on top of that and count from the first day of the menstrual cycle in which the egg jumped. So, we finally arrived at a crucial point in the embryological development. Based on our genetic composition, sex-determining hormones start to shape the appearance of the unborn life. And right here, we can see a pattern. Since all the organs were preformed up until this point, there's some sort of rearrangement and modification of components that are basically present in both genders. This is a rough sketch of the fetal external arrangement. We have a genital tubercle, a urethral fold, the labioscrotal swelling, and down here is, well, the butthole. And from these structures, all those parts form that we consider private. Now I understand it is a little hard to imagine, so let me draw it out for you. The labioscrotal pouch, as the name suggests, forms the big labia, if it's a girl, and the scrotum, aka the ballsack, for the boys. Now at this point, you can kinda imagine that the sensory stimulation to the big labia should feel somewhat similar to the stimulation to the scrotum and vice versa. The urethral fold collapses inwards and forms the small labia and part of the vagina for the girls. If it's a boy, that part falls outwards and forms the shaft of the penis. And since the nerves that are responsible for stimulation are the same in those regions for both genders, you can assume that also here, stimulation will feel very similar. Now the crucial part. The genital tubercle shrinks down to become the clitoris for the girls. But for boys, it will become the glans, the tip of the penis. That part is the most sensitive one and responsible for the major proportion of the sexual stimulation. So here lies one part of the explanation why it is so much more difficult for women to get to an orgasm in comparison to men. Plain vaginal penetration for women would feel something like if men were to stroke exclusively the shaft of the penis. For men, on the other hand, penetrative sex means constant stimulation of the shaft and the extremely responsive glans. Kind of unfair, isn't it? Why did nature give man such a giant pleasure knob on a stick while shrinking and hiding the same structure under skin tent in women? Well, we don't know, but what we do know now is how the opposite gender will feel when doing the deed. Now, of course, I know that this might not be 100% correct and accurate. Everybody is unique and individually built on an anatomical and psychological layer, and all of that plays a role in sexual sensation. But the general idea is still true. So hopefully this information is helpful for boys and for girls to better understand the specific needs and feelings of the other part. especially why it might be more difficult for girls to reach the same level of stimulation as boys. It is very normal, and it's harder, and it's often necessary to try out different approaches to ensure stimulation of the clitoris as well. For boys, it's a fair bit easier. But since we all now have a better idea of what our partner might be feeling, we can be much more considerate and maybe from here on help out our partner even more. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please consider liking and subscribing to help me make more entertaining science videos for you in the future. See you guys in the next one.